did you get up there? Silly. Well, I guess that now you're up here, I can ask you a question. It's a fun little quiz I want you to take. So, from our options, do you like A, lizards and turtles? B, really beautiful birds and cranes that have those really long legs? C, mummies? B, decaying plant matter? Well, lucky for you, if you picked any of these answers, you, like bogs, don't know what a bog is? You don't know what a freaking bog is? Understandable. I mean, who does? Except for me, because I really like bogs. It's not an obsession, it's just a light, fascination. I mean, who wouldn't like muddy pits of decaying plant matter? I mean, come on. That's a hit at the parties, honestly. Okay, now that you're safe from the big tall tower, I want to bring up bogs again, because this isn't a Rapunzel, this is bogs. Bogpunzel. Maybe that should be my new idea, but I'm getting besides myself right here. I love bogs. I don't think I can tell anyone more about how I love bogs. I know I said I'm not obsessed, but I am obsessed. And it's an obsession that doesn't hurt anyone. Like, imagine being a bog. Okay, wait, no. Imagine you are really, really, really tiny. Like this small. But you have, like, you're the second most heaviest being on Earth. That's a bad metaphor. But nonetheless, that's what a bog is. But like, they're 3% of the Earth, but store 33% of the Earth's carbon. I mean, imagine being that much carbon. I mean, we're carbon, but imagine like just imagine I am 33% of this Earth's carbon. I wouldn't want to be 33% of the Earth's carbon. What a big responsibility. I couldn't handle that, but bogs can. And I don't wish to be a bog because that's so much responsibility, but I do wish more people respected bogs. And I'm going to tell you about why yes, you, right there, you, as I said before, I am addressing you. Don't get that mixed up. I'm not addressing your Uncle Steve or your dad. I'm addressing you. Why you should care about bogs, because they're not the ocean and you can't go and take fun beach pics in, but I kind of like that idea. What if we start a trend of like save the bogs? We post our photos of bogs on Instagram and it's a big trend and it gets on Twitter. It would never happen because bogs aren't the most pretty things, but they're really cool. And I'm going to talk to you more about why you should think bogs are cool, because they're being destroyed, and the destruction of bogs leads to global warming increasing. Hi guys, and welcome to my game show. What does this picture and this picture have in common? Well, they're both, in a form, graveyards. Well, I know it's obvious with this picture that it is a graveyard, for that is where we bury people, and there's stones and signs, they tell us it's graveyards. But when you look at this picture, I don't see a sign that says graveyard, you know? Like, where's that sign? Why do I think it's a graveyard? And not in the gruesome way though, like not a cool way though, it's a graveyard. Like you want to go take gothic photos in this bog. Well, that's because bogs are basically piles of dead plants with other dead things in it. So, bogs are nature's graveyards, but they're also nature's embalmers, because just like our graveyards today that are full of preserved bodies stuck in caskets, our bogs are full of preserved plants and animals stuck in the ground. So what is a bog? A bog is basically, there's rain, and there's a river, or there's a lake, or there's a little fun little glacier. It's a little glacier. And it goes, woo, and it runs off into mud and plants and stuff. So basically there's big transition areas of runoff between water and land, and bogs are created. And moss loves this. Moss loves wet things. And this moss, it grows and then it dies. But then more grows and then it dies. But then it grows again. And that moss, like me stepping on piles of dirty laundry to get them to fit in my laundry basket, smushes down and down and down and down. So much so that they're compressed and it forms ground, and it's dead plant matter, but it's what the ground is. Though you can't really walk on it because it's still a little wet and mushy, so like you kind of be like, you would be like, and you gotta have your boots on, so you have your boots that are up to here, and you're walking through the bog, and you're kind of sticking. So basically, you're walking through dead plants. But I mean, we eat dead plants, so don't freak out. So, bogs are basically mummy makers. Like, if the Egyptians were not people and were big vats of dead plant matter, they'd be bogs, because bogs, due to constant flooding and acidic environment due to the moss that grows on top, don't really provide the best place for bacteria to grow. So, things that live in bogs get preserved amazingly and don't really get broken up and decayed and released back into the carbon cycle. Some of our oldest and well-preserved mummies come from bogs in Northern Europe. We have a man who is from 2000 BC, and this man was executed and put into a bog. And we have his stomach and all his organs. He is so well preserved. We can look in that thing and see what his last meal was. But I don't want to just talk about the death related to bog, because death isn't everyone's forte, and I understand. But I want you guys to know what bogs are and why they are so important to this earth. Oh, I'm sorry. How'd you get the mic? So, what are bogs? Bogs are nature's carbon storages. What that means is that bogs basically store 33% of the Earth's carbon, which is a lot, because only thing above them that stores more carbon is our ocean. Our ocean. Imagine being 3% of the world, but storing 33% of the world's carbon just under the ocean. And they store twice as much as our forests. So imagine the process. So you see the damage destroying our forest does to our earth? Seeing that damage, look at it with our bogs. Burning our bogs actually causes more climate change and more global warming, because that 33% of carbon is being released into the air and is warming the earth. So bogs are basically our destroyers. They're like they're like poison berries, when you take a bite, you're like, fine, and then it hits you. So they might not kill you upon touch, and they might not attack you, but they discreetly, they come in, they go like, whoa, and they go like sneak attack. They hit, and they run. And you're like, you're left. You're too defenseless. What do you do? That's what a bog does. So our destruction of it is like, aha, gotcha. Oh, you think you can destroy me? Ha ha ha. No. You can't destroy me. I'm a bog. And we go, oh, I'm sorry, bog. I'm sorry, bog. And the bog goes, huh? It's too late, you burned me. Now, why do we burn bogs? Well, bog area isn't very useful for humans to settle in, so we burn them and dry them out to make farms, because the peat, which is also what they're called peat bogs. Peat, which is the dead plant matter I was talking about you with, that we talked about, and we were like, peat, and you were like, but I know you didn't say anything, but I hope you were like, yeah, peat, because everyone knows what peat is. It's dead plant matter that's under the bogs. Anyway, peat is rich in carbon, so when peat is burned, it is then used for agricultural sites where we plant things and they grow really well because there's carbon. Because plants and life just love carbon. That's what we are, so they use it to help grow more. So that carbon that's in the peat really helps agriculture. So we've decided, we're going to burn our peats and drain them for that agriculture. And peat is also pre-coal, so since it is pre-coal, it's also used for burning, and that's been done in a lot of Europe, and you can see where peat bogs have been dug up and used for burning things and starting fires and stuff. So our peat bogs have actually provided a lot of use for us, but now we're destroying them through drainage and burning and just overall really hurting them. We tend to have a lot of distaste, I'd say, for bogs. They're not always pretty. They don't always smell amazing. They're full of bugs, and we don't really like bugs. They're not the ocean. They're not wide and beautiful and mysterious. They're bogs. And that's okay. Some things don't have to be beautiful sights for us to want to preserve them. They don't have to be great oceans and the Great Barrier Reef and our rainforests to feel a need to save them. Because in the end, every part of Earth is truly beloved, and we don't want to destroy any part of it. What can you do to save bogs? Well, basic things just like recycling and taking care of your stuff and knowing where it goes and keeping track of what you own and what is being thrown into the environment. A big part of taking care of your bogs is leaving the environment alone. By leaving the environment alone, bogs can thrive as how they always have. Though the problem comes from bogs that have already been destroyed. What do we do with that? I mean, I can't just sit there and say, grow bog, grow. As much as I love bogs, and as much as I'm sure if I met a bog, they would say it back. But since I can't do that, what is being done outside of this? And what can you do to support? There's plenty of petitions you can sign to help with re-wetting programs, and you can donate to countries like Indonesia that are currently working on these re-wetting programs to help get little frogs to have their habitat back. Re-wetting basically closes off the canals that are used to drain the bogs, because to get the water out, bogs are so wet they have to be constantly drained since they're getting another source. So with re-wetting programs, we close off these canals. And we find other places for people to find agriculture and work in. And we also work on eco-friendly agriculture. Plants like cranberries can be grown in our bogs. Cranberries grow on top of water, and they grow really well in bog environments. But with Indonesia, where a big problem of burning bogs is happening, the process of re-wetting has actually gone really well. People have seen a big decrease in fires that are being sparked up there, because the carbon, when it's dry, it is just ready to ignite. But when they're re-wetted, the carbon can come back and be wet and not have to worry about fires that might span for days because of all this burning material they have. Bogs house amazing species like the whooping crane that is endangered in America that only finds place to nest in our bogs. And there aren't that many bogs in America, most of them in Michigan and lining the East Coast. But people want to cover bogs. People aren't caring about nature that isn't the beauty they want. And that's sad, because I really like bogs. And I think you should too. I think bogs are something that could really, if we destroy them, could lead to our downfall. And not just stuff like burning coal, but that much carbon being released from a natural source is really harmful. And also, bog mummies are hella tight. So, say bogs. I mean, what could be the worst of it? More bogs? More bog mummies? Dude, literally, we could have more half people. Some more arms that we find in bogs later. And if we destroy bogs, there's not much to it. Bogs are great. And they need to be protected. And you might think that because you're just a teenager and you can't do much about bogs, something's going to happen. But if you talk about bogs and we start romanticizing bogs, not even romanticizing, but we start being like, this is so cool. Look at this cool part of nature. And the goths go into bogs and they take those cool pics like they do in graveyards, but they do it in bogs and it starts trending and more people care about bogs. So one step is to talk about bogs. Be passionate about bogs. Think about bogs. Think about how cool bog mummies are. Talk about bog mummies. Hell, I'm sure not everyone knew what a bog mummy was. But bog mummies are cool. And if you talk about bog mummies, maybe bogs will get into our public eye. And we can have more bog awareness. And think about bogs. And celebrate bogs. And have bog day. We won't have bog day, but I'll have bog day. You can come celebrate bog day with me on this day. And we can have fun. And we can do bog stuff. Like, look at turtles and bugs and the hairy canary fly. So, all I have to say is bogs are really cool. And I really like them. I mean, they're muddy, and I don't like mud, and I don't like dirt. But that doesn't mean I can't love a bog. Because I am scared of the ocean. But I wanted to be a marine biologist, so I think we're all just a little weird inside. So I hope you take this message to heart and you think about bogs more. Because the savior of our bogs is really the savior of our planet. The idea that just this tiny little area of Earth, this 3% of Earth, has such a large impact can be really hard for us. But we care about the Great Barrier Reef and we care about the rainforest. So we can put that attention onto bogs too, because no one area of Earth should be left out. And so I put you back up where I found you. And I hope you think about bogs, and you talk about bogs. And maybe get your friends into bogs. Because bogs, cool, and I've talked about them so much, and I won't bore you anymore with bogs. But there is really old butter we found in bogs, and I wonder if I can eat it. And I won't be able to if we don't care about bogs. So care about bogs and get me to eat old butter. Yum. Maybe it's still good. Who knows? There's no bacteria there, so I'll eat it and we can test it. And then maybe we can make some really old toast. Because that'll be something. We can go like bog butter and old bread and we can be like whoop, whoop, whoop. And I can become the bog man. Not yet, though. It'll give me a couple years and live my life, and then I can be the bog man. And I can be your bog man. Bog woman. You know, that's what I am, I guess. Anyway, a love for bogs means the love for life that isn't always beautiful, and the acceptance that life isn't a Great Barrier Reef, but that it's still beautiful in the slightest ways. So, talk about bogs, look at bog resources like petitions, and donate to bog funds of countries that might not have the economic aid to fill in bogs due to their agricultural purposes. And eat some cranberries. Get the dried ones, they're better, but anyway, I hope you have a fun time thinking about bogs and decide to research more bogs. Because I've talked here for now 35 minutes about bogs, and I don't think you know anyone else in the world who can sit here and talk for 35 minutes about bogs, because I can, and I will talk more. I could talk an hour about bogs, but luckily I'm not making an hour-long video, nor will this be 35 minutes. This is just going to be a PSA that I edit down. Anyway, I love bogs. I love you. And I hope you love bogs too, because then this relationship won't work. Because number one in my heart is bogs, my bog-shaped heart. And I don't want a bog-shaped hole in that heart.